Welcome back, guys, to the Butterfly Season podcast. I have a doozy for you. My dear friend, Rebecca Cafiero, is on the podcast today. And just to preface, this is a 2-part podcast. So if you're listening to part 2, go back to part 1 because it is jam-packed with a lot. We go everywhere. But before I even hint about where we go, Rebecca is a business growth and visibility strategist. She is literally a PR maven, best-selling author, like multiple times over. She is a founder, podcaster, been in Forbes, US News, ABC News. Like, she is literally the real deal when it comes to visibility, PR, credibility, but also just in the healing space. Rebecca and I got to know each other at a mastermind that we're both in. And every year the mastermind votes for the MVP of the year. And it's a year-long mastermind. And the MVP, the voting like credentials are just based on the person who has given the most to the group. And Rebecca was a winner of that because that is her heart. She is a giver, and she has shown me so many things about spirituality and just really tapping into your higher self, right? Like just getting you so aligned on a health level, on a spiritual level. And I wanted to have her on the podcast, not to talk about PR or visibility, but really to talk about spirituality and the journey that she's been on and the evolution that I have seen her go through over the last 2 years. It is very much like start of a cocoon season, if you will, into a blooming, blossoming butterfly. And I'm excited to unpack all of that with you guys. Get ready. It is a journey. Put your seatbelts on. We are going into all of the things: psilocybin, breathwork, hypnobreathwork, past lives, genealogy, and so much more. So I hope you guys enjoy. I am so stoked to have you on the podcast, Rebecca. You have uncovered things for me in my life in so many different areas that I feel like, God puts people in your life for reasons to help, I don't know, breadcrumbs or whatever, to help you uncover things or explore different areas. And just having been with you in Chris Harder's mastermind for 2 years now, like the magnitude of the breadcrumbs that you've unintentionally have left me have shown me so much in my life. And so I want to talk to you about your journey, your self-uncovering, self-healing, your journey. And I know it's a little bit unconventional from what you typically talk about, all things PR, publicity. So thank you for indulging me in this realm.
Well, first of all, I love it. And it's like I'm already getting weepy, so this is going to be fun. I'm feeling emotional. I was just thinking as you were saying, like you and I have, from like a resume standpoint, have so many similarities.
So many.
Like, there's so much crossover. And I love the fact that in the entire time we've known each other, we've almost never talked about any of those things.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point. We literally never do, which I love so much. I was asked yesterday or the day before to speak on stage about like PR and all of the things. And I was just like, hey, like I would love that opportunity, but I just don't align with that right now. So
well,
I think it's
talk about what we do. We talk about who we are and like how we're becoming.
Yes. Yeah. So I love that. I love that for us. So I want to dive into, let me think. I think I've done breath work once and I felt like it was a little hodgepodgey, like not as intentional as it was when I was reintroduced to it with you. You were so gracious. You were like, hey, whoever wants a hypno breathwork session, it's changed my life. And I am like very much like on the hippie train, but like some things I'm like the word hypno and then breathwork. I'm like, I don't know what type of voodoo this woman wants to do on all of us, but like, no, thank you. Right. And then we talked more and you were saying how it's changed your life, like how this thing is the thing. And I want you to unpack that.
Oh my goodness. That's a big suitcase to unpack. Well, let's just talk a little about personal growth first, because I think it's important to create the foundation of like, why was I even looking at breathwork, or how did it come in? Because actually I wasn't for it. In fact, I've actually been in the past resistant to breathwork. I'm like, I need to breathe because it's what I need. And
Did you know that was what you needed the most before you were, you know what I mean? Like at what point in your introduction to breathwork were you like, oh wow, I was resistant to this because I actually needed it?
Oh, I just realized that right now.
Mm.
I realized that because when I started experiencing like serious anxiety, and it's like now as I feel it, like I feel it in my body, that was in my late teens. And I used to like nearly hyperventilate. Like would feel like I couldn't catch a breath. Like I'd be like gasping, and I couldn't get the breath into my lungs.
Mm.
And then in my my mid 20s, as I was like very much on the corporate track, I was, doing all the things, like slaying all the things that look good on LinkedIn, but was like completely unaligned. I remember going for a massage in New York. I was like visiting New York, got a massage, and the masseuse says, "You're not breathing. You're literally not breathing." And I would joke, I must be like a fish because I just have gills. Like I breathing through osmosis. But what she meant is I was in such a state of fight or flight for so many years. I was sharing with someone the other day, it was probably 20 years of just one thing after the other that put me into, the health side is like the adrenal fatigue, the burnout, like the mono, all of those things. But I was in such a state of fight or flight, I didn't even feel safe to like fully breathe in my body. And that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah. And so how were you introduced to it?
Well, I am a personal growth, life optimization, like even a little biohacking like junkie. So I've tried all the things, and I can remember a couple of years ago, a girlfriend of mine, I think it was right in the beginning of the pandemic, she sent me, it was an 18-minute breathwork meditation. She said, "I think that you should do this. I feel like it would be really beneficial for you because you're always going, going, going," right? The busy word that I hate. Like, and I'd realized I'm like, I don't want to be busy anymore. But she sent it to me and she said, if you skip through the first 3 minutes, they're showing how to do the breath. You can just even skip through that and just listen to the prompts. And it's only 15 minutes then. And I think I had that for 2 months before I was like, all right, let me find 18 minutes to literally breathe. And I started with that, and it was really helpful. And I noticed I would feel very clear. I would feel very grounded, but it still wasn't something I was doing like all of the time. I was doing it sometimes. And then in May of sometime in 2020, I had gotten introduced by like a friend to a client of his, and she had reached out. And what I don't even think I shared with you is she is very type A, very science driven, but she also is, into the spirituality. And she'd asked her spiritual coach, she's like, I need more visibility. She was fundraising for her app. I need more visibility. Like, what's the sign? And her coach was like, look for 444. Anyway, we had this introduction. She was talking to a few people, and my Zoom was 44417. And she literally is like, I saw your Zoom link and I knew. So she created this modality called hypnobreathwork. And she was looking to, fundraise for her app. She was looking to just like create more visibility and credibility around it. And I can remember, we did that first call and she decided to work with me. But she said, but before we start working together, I want to take you through a session. And I said, well, I've done breath work. I've done somatic. I've done this. I had actually, at the same retreat I met you at, it wasn't the same day, but at Kayla Craft's retreat, I had done a 2.5 or 3 hour somatic breathwork session. And it was incredibly powerful.
Wow.
And I like actually now look back and I'm like, I think I went into like a womb space. And what came out of it was I felt things. It wasn't clear, but I felt a lot of emotion. It was definitely like shadow work. And I was like, I've carried this, but I won't carry it on. But the problem that I had with that type of breath work is it didn't wrap things up with like, here's what you can do next. It was just like pulled up a lot of emotions, and I felt very vulnerable and I had no idea what to do with that information.
So the integration was like the huge piece. And so help me understand. I understand, but I think that a lot of the listeners, watchers, however they're consuming the Butterfly Season podcast, aren't as dropped in the spiritual realm. So when you're saying shadow work, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh, I probably need to like look up an official definition. But
yeah, whatever it means to you. I'll tell you what I feel like it means to me. But
I think that it's typically like everything is like there's light and dark, right? There's two sides of every coin. The shadow work is often going to the things that like bring us pain, whether they're ours or they're from something else, right? They've been given to us, inherited. And it's the things that if we lean into, and we're willing to go through the pain and like walk through the fire instead of ignoring it and like just allowing it to like create pain, but not actually addressing it. It's if we can go through it, we find out who we really are. And we have all of this, there's all of this reward on the other side. It's the fact that you have to go through the darkness to truly find the light. And I did a lot of that unwillingly. And I should say, like, I didn't pursue it. It's just well, if you don't pursue it, what happens is the same things happen over and over.
Right.
Right.
And we all have those same patterns, same lesson. It's like Yep, the same thing. I've like met the same person over and over and over again, and I have the same relationship with that person over and over and over again. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with the person, but really, like, I think what I'm negatively thinking, attracting, feeling, I actually attract that same thing over and over until I heal that thing, and then I no longer attract that scenario.
Yeah, it's basically so the breath work and shadow work. It's like it's about working through like things that are in our subconscious, right?
Yeah.
To uncover these pieces of ourselves, whether, typically we may be only aware of like the top, it's like the top of the iceberg. And usually this is around trauma or pieces of our personality. Especially, I think this is really important if you really want to like step in confidently to who you are without judgment. And, I'm an Enneagram 7, so I'm like, avoid pain at all costs. Shadow work is terrible. I mean, shadow work is not fun, but I was like done. I didn't want to live it anymore. So I'm like, I can either ignore doing the work and keep living out these experiences meant to teach me a lesson, or I could like actually do the work. So I started like to create this correlation between work that can feel really stretchy. And I'm not just talking about like doing work in our lives, like speaking on stage, which we haven't done before, like launching a podcast, like all feels scary, but the fear comes from the shadow inside. That's like, well, what is this really about? Is this about being visible and then being open for criticism or for judgment, right? And where did that first show up? And what do you need to heal around that? Or how do you need to feel enough? So this is a combination of coaching and therapy. And like I said, I hired my first life coach at 25, which that's 18 years ago.
Wow.
This cool.
Oh my God. Are you kidding? I would have never even at 25. You know what I was doing at 25? I was like, I probably shouldn't say it since I started coughing right now. I was doing things that I shouldn't have been doing at 25, and it was not trying to figure out how to like optimize my life and heal trauma.
To be fair, I don't think I was trying to heal trauma at the time. I had a friend that was like, I met with a life coach and it was amazing. So I was attracted to the it was amazing part, not understanding that to always get to the good, you have to either go through or at least release something that's hard. And I think as we do more and more work and we're less resistant to the part that's hard, and I'll make an analogy of this. I've had IV drips a few times, and the guy that I get IV drips from, he like comes to our house. He gives you something, and I'm like, what is it called? NAD, NAD.
Mm-hmm.
And in a drip, he told me the first time, he's like, this is going to be intense. Just breathe through it. And the first time I went through it, I was like, oh my God. To me, it was like childbirth. This is terrible. I mean, wow. I had an amazing experience, but let's be real. Yeah. It is hard, at least for a portion of it. I was like, this is terrible. And I don't know if I'm going to survive this. And I don't know how long it's going to last.
Wow.
And I feel like that's the first time you go through shadow work. Like, I don't know how long this is going to last. Yes. I'm just hoping I make it out alive.
Yeah.
And so for anybody that ever does an IV drip with NAD that he pushed it through, he didn't drip it through, it lasted about 60 to 90 seconds. It's kind of like a roller coaster. Seconds, that's it. It was like being encased in concrete. It was terrible, but it's amazingly healing for the body. So after I did it the first time, I was like, okay, I survived. That wasn't as bad. It was the fear of it being in the moment, not knowing how you're going to come out, when you're going to come out, if you're going to come out. And that's the same thing for childbirth. It's like riding a roller coaster. Like, damn, that was scary. Yeah. But now that I know what to expect, like, it's not so bad the second time. So now when I get an IV drip, I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be pleasant. Like, but I'm not stressed out about it, right? I know I'm going to come through it. And I think that's what doing the shadow work or the deep work is once you do it the first or second time, and you're like, okay, I see the positive, you're more willing to go into it and actually look forward to the part that hurts a little because you know there's a reward on the other side.
Totally. And so walk me through your first hypnobreathwork or your first breathwork session. A lot of emotions came up. Now, you felt like there was something missing, which like an integration piece of some sort, right? Similarly, yes. I felt when I first started microdosing, I didn't do it with a therapist. I just was doing it. And also waves of emotion came up and I was like, felt like I was holding this big ball of emotion. I'm like, hey, excuse me, does anyone know what I do with this? Like, what do I do with this guy? So now you meet this gal on a Zoom call. You go through what is hypnobreathwork.
Exactly.
Okay.
And she explained it to me. I mean, I can give the explanation. It's like, it's a method that uses breath work to clear energetic patterns, which literally is like how energy is trapped in our body. It uses hypnosis, or I say hypnotic cues, to reprogram subconscious beliefs that can hold us back. And it uses visioning, like think of it like manifestation, but visioning to see new possibilities, or basically to like create pathways. And the important thing is this is all geared to, yes, healing and processed emotions and rewiring limiting beliefs, but most importantly, to create behavior change that's sustainable. And what I found is when I do breath work, which I'm like, gotta get back into it literally today, is it helps me take intuitive and aligned action. Because often we're like, oh, I need to do all these things, but we're either out of alignment. It's like why I say we don't need more strategy, right? Like you can have all the strategy in the world, but not do it, or not do it like 100%, and it's not going to work. It's like the hypnobreath work specifically versus somatic and other things I've tried, it creates this awareness and this alignment so you can get done. And you're like, this is exactly what I am going to do next because I'm called to do it. I feel it in my body. And so there's no resistance from doing that thing that will move you forward. And sometimes that's ending a relationship. I mean, I've used it to like fire people when I knew for months this person isn't aligned. They're creating a ton of stress. And then I avoided doing breath work on it because I knew I'd get the answer I didn't want.
Yeah.
And I finally did it. I was like, all right, this is the truth. So that very first session, she's like, well, what do you want to work on? And I know you and I've talked about moms. I'm like, my mom's hopefully not listening to this. But I said, I have a lot of stuff around my mom. And I really wanted to do some work. My mom was about to visit me. And I was like, I don't want to get triggered. I don't want to treat my mom in ways that I'm not proud of. And there are times I get triggered. And as an Enneagram 7, when I'm triggered, I go into my unhealthy 1. My mom is a 1. So it's like fighting fire with fire. It doesn't work.
Right.
And it just creates that pattern that we've been in for decades. So I said, well, can I do it on my mom? Or about this, thing with my mom. And she asked me some questions, some cues, and then she created the session. And it was to music. And I was like, oh, I've done breathwork to music, but even the music was customized for the result. And what I will say is I have done a good amount of therapy, and stuff with my parents or my mom has came up a lot, and I've done a lot of work, and it's all been helpful. And we're not just talking like talk therapy, we're talking EMDR, right?
Yeah.
Like the more deep therapy.
Yeah.
And this session, I had more awareness, openness, and compassion from my mom than I'd like ever had.
Wow.
In 25 minutes. I was bawling my eyes out, but in a good way. It felt good.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from there, you're like, okay, I'm going to integrate this into my daily routine. Or were you just like, wow, this felt good. Let me try it one more time. How did we get to something that you like couldn't live without?
So I did it that time, and then a few other times, occasionally when she would offer sessions, I would be like, okay, I want to join the session, right? She'd do a group session. And it was really powerful. And I think what was powerful about group, and it's why I love group experience, is I saw that this just wasn't me getting this response. And people that had it as a practice were like sharing like what came up today versus like what comes up normally. Because I do feel like it's very powerful when it's customized for you.
Totally.
And then she had a course, and I said, so I was like, I'd love access to the course. And it was all pre-recorded, and I went through it. And same thing, it took me a long time. It was 12 sessions. And I know some people that like binge them and they do them in 2 days, which actually I want to do again. But I had to do it like almost like 1 or 2 a week because it's deep. It's like releasing mom and dad issues and like self-worth, and there's shadow work and, sex transmutation, which is about like harnessing like your creativity. And it was so good. And then after I'd gone through that, I was like, all right, I can see the difference, like literally in how I'm feeling and how I'm showing up. And so I think it was around November of 2021, is maybe 6 months after I was introduced, that I began to do it every day. And I still say this is totally what put my business in a totally different place.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that. You were like, I just wake up in the morning and I do breath work and I know exactly what I need to do that day.
I remember we had our first live event, and this is like March of 2022. And I'm not like one of the, people that like were really crazy worried about COVID, but it was still like coming out of not seeing people for 2 years.
Right.
And it was also my first event. It was my first big event. We had, I think, about 70 people there. And I had done smaller events. I'd spoken at big events, but never my own.
Yeah.
And we ended up, I literally woke up that morning and I was like, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I'm so nervous. And I did a manifestation hypnobreathwork about how do I want to feel. So just, again, 25 minutes guided. And I came out so clear, feeling so in my body, feeling so on purpose. And I did that both days. I also led people through it. And on day 2, we did over $300,000 of sales to a room with 60 people. And it wasn't about, it was just because I completely felt connected and in service, and people felt that.
Right. Energetically. So I don't know if you know this answer. You and I have never spoke about this, but scientifically, with someone who's hearing this right now is like, what in the actual fuck? What is happening in your body when you're breathing? What is breathing? Are you breathing like in and out really fast? Like, what is it?
So the one is the breath like oxygenates the brain. And most of the time we're not really breathing properly. So we're typically not getting the oxygen to the brain that we need. And in fact, with breath work, you can even what's called over-oxygenate it. It's not dangerous, but you feel a lot of feeling. And so that can show up like as tingles, but also the way that the breath works in the music, it puts you into this like trance-induced state. And I like to say, no one's going to have you do anything. Like I don't feel like you're under. I've been hypnotized before. It feels very different. It just more is about like openness. And you don't go so instantly to judgment of yourself, of your thoughts, of possibilities. And it's the biggest thing is it's integrating the mind, the body, and the subconscious. And depending on what someone's doing, like I like to say, I love to do like manifestation. I love to do flow or clarity breath work because those are like the lighter, easier. There's also the unblock, which is, again, similar format, but is really about like getting something out. And I've led some sessions of that where people's hands clamped up. They literally couldn't move their hands because they had so much they were processing.
Wow.
And the body keeps score, right?
Yeah.
But it basically, it creates a place where your brain is more susceptible. And that lets you align like the conscious goals. Like I want to go into this with a strategy to do X, Y, or Z. But it aligns those conscious goals with your subconscious motivations. And often we set goals, but subconsciously we're blocked or we have different ideas. And so we end up in this state where we're just constantly conflicted. So you've got to align the conscious goals and the conscious mind with the subconscious to actually shift the energy in the body and create what you want. So it's awareness of the patterns and beliefs. It's releasing of the changes, right? Where we constantly fall into the same patterns. It helps us basically helps us rewire our nervous system. And then it creates action, helps cement the behavior. And I like to say, like, it's not like you're going to be changed forever. Like that is why when I started doing it consistently, I started getting different results. But if you imagine, and I know we're going to talk about other like medicine and things, if you imagine that you've got these like patterns that you're in, whether aware or not, and it's like paths in the dirt, right? So when you need to like go somewhere, you're going to instantly follow the path you know, because it's like it's trodden, it's easy to go down. Imagine breathwork being like having a coat of snowfall. And I don't know if you were the one that used that analogy with me one time. I heard someone use this. Were you the one? Was it you?
Yeah. About the shirt.
That just resonated with me because I'm like, it is like that. It's like you can still kind of see the old path, but all of a sudden, like you feel like there's more of a blank slate of like, I can go and do something different.
Create your own. Yeah.
Create your own. Exactly.
So I love that. I love the way that you explained breath work because I had, especially hypnobreathwork, because I had no idea the power that it had. I've done a few sessions now, one with your friend who I believe who you're talking about, Mastery app. And that one was interesting. I was just on a call to talk about the app. And so she like guided everyone through like a breathwork session. And I think it was about like action or business or what's the next step to move forward or something like that. And this was so interesting. Mine was to create I wanted to, in the interim, like help a few like handpicked agency owners scale their agency because I had an agency and I just know some of the things that people look over to like keep that don't keep you profitable, that like make you stop, all of the things. So I knew I wanted to do that, but I also like don't really align with being a coach. I like have zero interest in doing that at all. And I never really expressed that. I never like wrote it down on a journal for goals. It was just like a thought in my mind from whatever. And you have those, you take action on them or you don't. It's like, it is what it is. So on this call, we do this session, and my like very clear action item leaving is to create a landing page and just have it up on my website. And that's like it, like zero promotion. I am a projector on the human design scale or whatever. And so I'm supposed to wait for the invitation or give people opportunities to want to work with me. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just do that. And like literally maybe 2 weeks later, just some random girl fills out the application to work with me. I have no connection. I'm not to her or anything. And I was just like, oh my God, like this was me like putting something together, like matching my subconscious belief with it, and then allowing that energy to attract someone who's looking for exactly that. Like it is, the way you explain it is putting a lot of pieces together, even for me, with respect to our goals and how our brain works. It's like our brain is like a computer. And when the computer is trying to solve something for you, think like Chat GPT. When it's trying to solve something for you, or when you have a question, it wants to go down the path of least resistance. Like it wants to help you do that thing. But the things that get in the way, the detours of the past, are your limiting beliefs, not feeling worthy, sabotaging behaviors, trauma. Like those are all of the things that create roadblocks or detours that your higher self wants to guide you through them, but it's not that you have to go through them. It's the craziest thing. And so breathwork is like a perfect example for like helping facilitate that next level of whatever it is, even if it's not business related, but personal related.
100%. There's one other thing, and I don't think I even shared this with you. I had gone in end of 2019. I'd gone to this personal development thing. It was a friend of ours told us about it. And my husband was actually like, are you interested in going? And my husband's very much growth oriented too, but I was like, oh, this is cool, because normally like our growth is not, it's not on the same trajectory. We're just doing different things. I'm way more into the spiritual. He is like an engineer, Enneagram 7, like, or Enneagram 3. So he's like very much like, okay, I want the result. Like, so he has a coach, business coach, therapist, etc. Yeah. We went to this thing in the end of 2019. It was really well done. It was very masculine though. And I was like, I was reaching a time that I knew I needed to be more in my feminine. That was what was coming out. But we had done some type of exercise activity. And then right after, they'd offered us this thing if we wanted to partake. It was called network entrainment. And it is like the very woo side of chiropractic. It's almost like Reiki in chiropractic, but if you Google it, it still doesn't, like, even if you look at YouTube, like it wasn't what I experienced. But anyway, it was this experience where like we lay down on these tables and they literally like pulled energetic things out of us.
I just saw someone doing that on Instagram, like on the Explore page. And I was like, is this fake? Like the people aren't even looking at the person doing it. And she was just going like this behind them. And the people's bodies going like that. And I'm like, oh, this feels scary. Anyways, keep going. I feel like I just stumbled upon this.
So I did 2 sessions. And the second session, we had to pay for it. So the second session, the guy that was doing it does Tony Robbins. He like flies on Tony Robbins' private jet and like does this for him and his team. So I'm like, all right, well, if it's good enough for Tony Robbins, I'm going to try this. Right?
It's good enough for me.
And completely, I mean, my husband's always a skeptic. He's like, okay, I felt some stuff that was kind of weird. And I was like, whoa, like I had points where I was like, ooh, like your head jerks up. Like it felt like you're getting these adjustments, but it's working with that like energy kind of, I don't know, that wraps around you. So I had just done my second one. The day was ending. We also did this. I was about to go do this experience with my husband. Like they were just really cool. They just kind of offered up a menu of like, here's some of the people here that like, if you want to partake in their genius. We were about to go do this session on really like embodiment and connection with a guy that had been either like a Buddhist monk or like lived in a monastery. But I went to the restroom to go use the restroom, coming out of this amazing day with my husband. And I was like washing my hands in the mirror and I got caught in the mirror.
What do you mean?
Because I know we're going to talk about this, but it's like, I literally was like washing my hands. I looked up and I looked at myself in the mirror. Keep in mind, this is the middle of the day. By the way, I'm stone cold sober. I am pumping because I left my daughter, but I was still nursing. There's nothing in my body. This was all just energy, right? Nothing. I'm not even drinking alcohol. And I literally looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm just putting a side note that like everyone that doesn't know me that's listening to this is like, this woman is off her record. I swear.
No, it's so funny because just like quickly, I always think like when I'm having these conversations with people on the podcast, I don't usually like drive home the accolades and all the things that they've done and all of their experience and all of their success and all of whatever. And so because I waffle between like I want you to get to know the person 100%, right? Like on this different level that's not like your LinkedIn level, but like on a more spiritual, energetic level. And so as you're saying this, I'm going to give you an appropriate intro so that people can fully understand and not feel like it just sucks because we have these preconceived notions and you feel like, okay, well, like if somebody was doing microdosing and maybe their life seemed like it was in the shambles, no one would want to microdose because they would say, I don't want to be like them. But if your life looks put together, you have whatever perceived success, whatever it is, even if you don't, people feel more inclined to listen to what you're saying because of whatever credibility that they think you have. Anyways, you get caught in the mirror.
I'll finish this crazy moment and then we'll talk about like this kind of theme that I think really kicked this all off, which is the theme of owning your magic. So I was looking in the mirror and I just like, I think often like we do a face check. We're like, all right, like makeup's on, like wipe my mascara from under my eyes. But I looked in the mirror and I like completely saw my soul. And what it brought me back to is I can remember having this dream. I used to have very vivid dreams as a child. I was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And my parents had been divorced. There was just a lot of like chaos and what I now realize is trauma. And I had this dream. And in this dream, I was like sitting in my grandmother's like upstairs extra bedroom. There's at this little vanity and there's a mirror in front of it. And I'm sitting here in my 8-year-old body. And I was like I think I was asking for like protection or safety or like certainty or something. Like basically like who's going to take care of me? Who's going to like keep me protected? And what showed up is I saw myself in the mirror getting older, literally like aging. And I can remember like seeing myself as a teenager. I'm like, oh, good. I'm not that awkward. And then I saw myself, I think I saw myself somewhere like as an adult woman. So I in around my age now. And in the mirror, again, this is my dream at 8. I just was like, I have you. I love you. Like, I will protect you. And it was like my future self speaking to my little girl. But I was a little girl. And I remembered that dream, but I didn't understand the significance until I was in that mirror at age 39, right? This is October 2019. And I'm like, oh my God, I am becoming that woman who is there and takes care of that little girl.
Oh.
And I realized like, this isn't just me at 40 or 39 or however old, like I am the soul. It was more of like, at this age, I am seeing who I actually am. That is not just who I am in this moment, who I am in this year, but like actually like what I am here for, my spirit, my soul.
Wow.
And there was such love and compassion and like safety. Like I got emotional, like tears filled my eyes. And I was having this, what I would call a telepathic conversation. And it wasn't a lot. It was more of a feeling and an understanding. And then at one point, my brain at that time was like, okay, we've been in the bathroom like 7 or 8 minutes. We've been staring at ourselves for 3 or 4. We need to leave the bathroom, right? And I can remember like, the woman in the mirror, me in the mirror, my soul just saying to me, again, in my mind, don't forget about me. And it was kind of like, I've been waiting for you. Don't forget about me, right? And I was like, wow, that was crazy. And then I went and, did this. I came from that to this like really incredibly connected experience with my husband. And so that was, like I said, end of October. And then that year, December 31st, 2018, my whole family like went to bed early. I remember I was like by myself. It was like 10:30. We have a second home in Carmel. We were in Carmel. And I pull out like kind of, my husband calls it my witchy shit, but, like some angel cards, a candle, my journal. Because I grew up in a family, I was always very interested in, like, I call it magic. Like, I read fairy stories. I loved fiction. And I remember at a young age telling my mom, like, I want to be a witch, but I meant like a white witch. Like, I want to heal people. Yeah. I want to use magic. Like, I used to love, like, reading about herbs. And my mom, and again, this is not malicious. My mom just made it off and came out like, no, witches are the devil. That's evil. And so it really, like, squashed this, like, this desire for like magic and possibility and transformation. And I was always really like curious about it, but I never pursued it because it felt like I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
And I didn't judge it. I was always like very curious by other people who really owned like their spirituality, like all the things. And so I just set my intention for 2020 to be own your magic. And what I did is I literally signed up to get Reiki certified. Like always been interested in this, but I didn't feel like I could have permission. I think a lot of it was I created a lot of barriers of time to actually stop myself, because when you're in your magic, you're not overbooked. It's spacious, right? Like magic and growth doesn't live when it's constricted. It's the opposite of that. So anyway, I created that, and again, like all the breath work, all the things came through. But I'm like, where did we start with that? What breath work did is it brought me back to the closest place to that mirror experience. And I can go back and I can recreate it. I've done it several times. I should add it to my daily routine of just like connecting with myself. Yeah. But breath work brought me back in a way that felt true and home.
So it's so funny that you mentioned that situation where your younger self at like a lower point in time saw like your higher self, which was you at this age. I think in Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural, he also explained like when he was healing a lot of like childhood stuff, that he was like looking out of a window when he was like washing the dishes and felt like there was someone watching him or something like that. And then he did a meditation as an adult and realized that that was actually him watching himself. Like just crazy to think about. So that story is so beautiful.